That one glorious word represents more than just the geography between the Sabine and the Rio Grande. It represents a unique idea and way of life. A life of rugged individualism, proud self-reliance, gritty toughness, and fierce independence. That is what made Texas, and that is what will save her again. Howdy, folks. Sam Houston here. I want to thank you for tuning into the Feed Bandit podcast. Feed Bandit is the Texas first outdoors brand built by rabid Texans, for rabid Texans, and all those who aim to be one someday. We unapologetically promote the ideals that shape our Texas pride and Texas first patriotism through our love of hunting, the outdoors, and the gear and apparel we create. Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Check us out at feedbandit.com. And to repeat that great rallying cry from a former colleague of mine, liberty or death. Now, enough of my talking. Here are a couple of bandits that love Texas as much as I do. Enjoy.
Howdy, friend. Welcome back to the Feed Bandit podcast. Jimmy back with you. It's now, let's see, about 2 weeks away from the big presidential election, and of course all the other national and state elections coming around. And instead of a straight Texas history kind of lesson on this one, I wanted to read an article I found about something interesting, very telling about political candidates. And if you're big into the politics, if you're a big party person, I'm a big Republican or a big Democrat or whatever, no matter what it is is a cautionary tale about who it is you support. And this is pretty interesting, I think. Kind of funny, kind of sad, kind of everything in between. So this one I saw from the Texas Nationalist TNM News website, and I got notified of this because I'm on their email list. If you care about Texas like I do, they're one of the big leaders out there right now, pushing for Texas independence again. I'd highly suggest getting on their email list, the Texas Nationalist Movement again. Follow them. They have some pretty interesting stuff to discuss. Eye-opening, all the good stuff. So anyway, let me go through this, and I think you'll find it disturbing in a way. So the title is SBOE Candidate Stevens Abandons Texas First Pledge in Election Retreat. State Board of Education. Okay. So it goes, Dr. Michael Travis Stevens, the Republican candidate for the State Board of Education, SBOE, District 1, has recently withdrawn from the Texas First Pledge, which he signed twice. His decision to step away from the pledge, particularly after signing it on two separate occasions, raises serious concerns about his honesty and his ability to stand by commitments made to the people of Texas. These concerns are even more amplified given the crucial role the State Board of Education plays in shaping the educational future of Texas and preserving the state's unique history and values. On January 19th, 2024, and again on February 5th, 2024, Dr. Stevens signed the Texas First Pledge. This pledge, created for candidates who wish to publicly commit to prioritizing the interests of Texas, is a straightforward document consisting of 4 key points. These points ask candidates to put Texas and Texans first, uphold Texans' constitutional right to alter or reform their government, and support a referendum on Texas reasserting its status as an independent nation. The language of the pledge is clear, direct, and simple, making Dr. Stevens' subsequent disavowal particularly troubling. Yeah, I'll say. But not surprising from a politician. And they go on to say, like, for transparency, here's a full text of the pledge that Dr. Stevens signed. Let's see if we can find anything to object in here. The Texas First Pledge. I pledge to place the interests of Texas and Texans before any other nation, state, political entity, organization, or individual. All right, I can buy that for $1. The second one. I further pledge to uphold the right of Texans under Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution to, quote, alter, reform, or abolish their government. No arguments here on that one. Third, if it is within the powers of my office, I will vote for legislation and resolutions to call for a vote on Texas reasserting its status as an independent nation in every term that I am elected until such a referendum is held. Okay, I think that's a good one. If you believe, as I do, as the bandits do, that it's about time for Texas to reassert its independence, then I would argue that every single politician that you support, you should require them to sign it up to those three at least. Let's see what the fourth one is. And meaning use their office to promote independence in the defense of Texas and Texans, no matter what the office is. The fourth bullet, however, is if a majority of people of Texas vote in support of Texas reasserting its status as an independent nation, I pledge to work toward a fair and expedient separation of Texas from the federal government, placing the interests of Texans first. Wow, I can see nothing to argue against in this pledge. And it's very straightforward. It's not partisan whatsoever. It's simply saying, as Texans or as a politician in an office, I pledge to support and do what I can to support Texas becoming independent again. That's it. Pretty clear cut and unambiguous. And the article goes on, despite his previous willingness to commit to these values, Dr. Stevens sent the following email to the Texas Nationalist Movement on October 9th, 2024. Email from Dr. Michael Travis Stevens. Back in January, I inadvertently signed the Texas First Pledge without fully reading through what I was pledging or researching what it entailed. What? Continue. After further review of the Texas First Pledge, I do not feel that I can align myself with the pledge and no longer want to be associated with it. Please remove my profile from your site and subsequently withdraw your endorsement of my campaign. I will also publicly disavow my support of the Texas First Pledge. Best regards, Dr. Michael Travis Stevens, SBOE District 1 candidate. And then I will add my own little PS. PS. I disavow this pledge because I am not a Texan. I am an anti-Texan, and I will do whatever I can to ensure that the people of Texas continue to operate and live under the thumb of the federal bureaucrats in Mordor, D.C. So this is unbelievable. This guy running for office, he signs a pledge twice, and he actually admits in his email that he signed it without fully reading through what I was pledging or researching what it entailed. Let that set in. He admits he'd signed it without fully reading it or researching it. And this guy is running for the State Board of Education in this state. If this guy gets one vote, whoever votes for this guy ought to be shot. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. So the article goes on and on, but there's a little Texas history in here that I thought was interesting. So it says the timing of his disavowal is worth noting. Texans overwhelmingly support the principles embodied in the Texas First Pledge, particularly the emphasis on state sovereignty and independence. The political environment has not shifted. What has changed is Dr. Stevens' willingness to stand by his earlier commitments. Just weeks before the general election, his retreat suggests a lack of courage to defend the values he previously claimed to support. This active retreat calls to mind the story of Louis Moses Rose, the man known for being the sole defender to leave the Alamo before the fateful battle. While many remember the heroic defenders who stood their ground, Moses Rose became a symbol of those who, when faced with defining moments of history, chose to walk away. Like Rose, Dr. Stevens has walked away from the line he himself agreed to cross when he signed the Texas First Pledge. His decision to back down leaves voters wondering if he will stand firm when the critical decisions arise in the future. Well, I mean, that pretty much says it all about this spineless lackey. Unbelievable. And this guy, State Board of Education District 1, covers a big part of Texas. I mean, it's Atascosa, Bandera, Bear, Brewster, Crockett, blah blah blah, Edwards, all the way down Medina, Menard, all the way up to Menard, Uvalde, Webb, Zapata, Zavala, all those counties. It's pretty unbelievable. This guy blatantly admits that he didn't read it or understand what it said when he signed it, but he's running for State Board of Education. Pretty amazing. All right, so curious what you guys think about that. But what I take away kind of from this is it's emblematic of the people that are running right now. And it's pretty sad that this guy is running in the state of Texas, a yellow belly like this. You got to be weary. You got to be careful. You got to know who you're voting for. Otherwise, don't vote if you don't know who the heck these people are. There's a lot to understand. But you know what it comes down to, especially in the national level. What if they gave an election and no one showed up? Let's say there was a national election and not one Texan voted for the federal bureaucrat or representative or whatever it was at the time. Now, wouldn't that be interesting? Would they then not have any power? Take that one away. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. I don't know. It's just, it makes me sick when I see things like this, see people like this, and they claim to be Texans and going out there to support and represent us, and especially on the education side through the government education and whatever else whatever the State Board of Education covers, the people under if he were elected, the kids, my kids, your kids, they'll be learning what this guy implements. And basically, the guy who admitted to signing something he never read. That's a great lesson for any student out there in Texas. Yeah, don't worry about what it says. Just go ahead and sign it if it's expedient for you. So anyway, this guy, hopefully he does not win. I'll try to remember to look him up after the election and give an update on this one. But it boils my blood to see spineless, yellow traitors like this doing things like this. And you know what? Most people will never hear that actually happened. So felt like I had to get that out there. If you know someone in the counties, District 1 is over, and you can remind them not to vote for this idiot, I would go ahead and implore you to do so. All right. With that, I want to jump over into a little whitetail talk, and got this interesting book called Whitetail Strategies. So I wanted to start maybe reading through this thing, seeing as how we're in October, almost to the opening of the regular season of deer hunting here in Texas, and might as well start getting a little fired up. If you haven't already been lucky enough to go out there and hunt the deer, let's see what we can draw from this thing, and maybe there's some tips or tricks or just general interesting information we can gather and take with us back out into the field whenever we go sit in our blind or do whatever we need to do. I know the first chapter will be some good, I think, reminder for all of us, no matter really how long you've been hunting. It's always good to have a re-up on some knowledge. So here we go. This is Whitetail Strategies, a no-nonsense approach to successful deer hunting by Peter Fiducia. And it starts with a poem called Mid-November. The sun is rising, and its warming rays press softly against my face. I've been sitting, looking and listening, but not a whitetail trace. As the sun rises over the mountaintop, the woods begin to stir. An owl returns to sleep as a chipmunk grooms its fur. The sun reaches an angle which makes the woods glitter, and the distracting sounds of squirrels start to make my patience wither. I change my position very slowly, trying not to cause a sound. when a black crow cries its warning, "Watch it, there's a stranger around." As I lean my back on the tree during this day in November, my mind begins to wander, and I think of things I love to remember. The leaves in all their splendid color have already fallen down. They're red, yellow, orange, and brown as they lie scattered on the forest ground. My ears strain for the slightest sound. My eyes are playing too, carefully scanning the forest, searching for a giveaway clue. It's mid-November and bitter cold, and the sun is just about risen, and I'm in the woods hunting deer, which isn't very surprising. Suddenly, a buck appears, holding his rack aloft. Trying to remain calm, I reach for my bow, breathing ever so soft. I put the pin on his chest and come to full draw. The arrow's impact shatters the silent air, and moments later, the buck lies on the forest floor, not trying to go anywhere. I approached him cautiously, not really believing he belongs to me. Even as I count the points on his rack, I contemplate the long drag back. I can't believe I've counted 10. I'd better relax and count them again. Then I realized I've got 11 months to go before it's mid-November and bitter cold, and the sun is rising and I'm growing old. Chapter 1: Anatomy, Biology, and Behavior of the White-tailed Deer. The modern-day white-tailed deer got its meager beginnings millions of years ago, probably right alongside of man's ancestor, Australopithecus, the tertiary and quaternary cervids, which scientists depict as having extruded canine teeth, made their slow and deliberate ascent up the evolutionary ladder. During that period of its development, the Eocene period, it was grouped in the order of artiodactyls, even-toed ungulates, a mammal whose body weight is maintained by the third and fourth metapodials, or toes. It continued to further evolve during the Miocene epoch era. That was just a reference to where you got it, I guess. When many of its family group began to become extinct, other members of the order went on to become breeding stock of today's modern-day artiodactyls, which include the suina, or pigs, peccaries, and hippopotamuses, all with 4 functional toes, cannon bones, bonodont, molar teeth, canine tusks, and simple stomachs, and the ruminantia, which contains the cud chewers. Modern-day ruminants most often have 2 functional toes, metapodials, melded as cannon bones, complex solenodont molars, upper incisors that are smaller or missing, canines that are inadequate or at best slightly enlarged in males, and compound stomachs. Man, forgive me for mispronouncing a lot of these words, probably. Today, all families of deer, including the whitetail, mule deer, blacktail deer, elk, moose, reindeer, caribou, and others known as cervidae, they are classified scientifically as phylum Chordata, which means they have backbones. They are in the class of Mammalia, because they are warm-blooded, have 4-chambered hearts, have hair on their bodies, give birth to their young alive, and have mammary glands to feed their young. Since their meager beginnings some 5 million years ago, when deer were no larger than rabbits, they've evolved into an animal that has learned to survive and adapt by being able to run swiftly through thicket or field, to leap without hesitation, effortlessly over an 8-foot obstacle if necessary, and to sneak past a predator, man or animal, without ever alerting the pursuer to their presence. The entire family of Cervidae includes 4 subfamilies, 17 genera, and about 37 subspecies of deer found worldwide. In North and Central America, there are about 30 subspecies of Dodocolius virginianus. In the United States and Canada, there are about 17 subspecies of the white-tailed deer. The 4 subspecies of white-tailed deer hunted in the United States include the white-tailed deer, the Columbia black-tailed deer, the Sitka black-tailed deer, and the Coosa's white-tailed deer. Coosa's. I feel like I've heard that before. I didn't know about that one. I mention this because today many trophy and non-trophy hunters alike are interested in collecting at least one of these deer. at least one of each of these deer. In fact, Safari Club International and other record-keeping organizations each have separate categories under which each of these different subfamilies are listed. They also offer awards to hunters who bag one trophy-sized buck of each subfamily, the Grand Slam of deer. Because this interests some whitetail hunters, I am including information about each subfamily, some characteristic information, distribution, and exactly what minimum measurements Boone & Crockett and the Safari Club International assigned to each to consider entry into their record books. The distribution of these 5 groups of deer ranges throughout North America. The whitetail deer, however, is the most widely distributed deer. It is found from the deep south swamps of Florida, north to northern conifer forests of Maine, along the river bottoms of the Rockies, in the shrubs and cactus deserts of Texas, to the frigid northern mountains of Alberta, Canada. And each year, its range is growing. In fact, whitetails are now quite common in the Rocky Mountain states of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado. Where only a decade or so ago, the whitetail's presence in Wyoming and especially Colorado was almost unheard of. It's widely agreed that most of the white-tailed deer is the primary big game animal throughout North America. The whitetail provides millions of deer hunters a challenging recreational opportunity, food, and a chance to hang a trophy on the den wall. The white-tailed deer is truly the most versatile big game animal. With little effort, it can make its home almost anywhere. With hardly little more effort, it can even adapt to living and has to areas that are inhospitable. Many Rocky Mountain deer hunting guides in the United States and Canada testify to the fact that over the last few decades, the white-tailed deer has methodically expanded its range from the thick covered river bottoms and drainages of these states, where they have plenty of food, water, and protection from snow and wind, into the less hospitable mountainous regions. One would think the heavily accumulated snowpacks of the mountains, which can accumulate to a dozen feet or more in most years, would restrain the whitetail's ability to find enough food, water, and shelter to survive in these harsh conditions. To the contrary, however, the whitetail has not only learned to survive in the mountains of the Rockies, is it adapted so well now, multiplying and continuing to expand its range even further into the remoteness of the Rocky Mountains, an apparent testimony of how well this cervidae has evolved in its never-ending struggle to reproduce and survive. No matter where the whitetail calls home, it easily learns to adapt to the conditions and terrain of its range. It has learned how to live within city limits, which they do where I live here in Comal County, and how to tolerate and adapt to man's land use programs, baseball fields, parks, and county picnic areas, and man's encroachment with construction of suburban malls, developments, and the like. In fact, the whitetail actually benefits from this type of human infiltration. As man cuts forests, he inadvertently opens them up to second growth, grasslands, pasture, and unknowingly, he creates ideal habitat for the whitetail, who's a creature of the edges and new growth. In some instances, even clear-cutting can be a benefit. In the case of the whitetail, clear-cutting of mature forests encourages new growth. The new succulent tender growth is highly sought after by deer. As the new growth develops, it provides the landscape with new plants, brush, and second growth trees, all of which increase the carrying capacity for whitetails. So despite how man hunts the whitetail or what man does to alter the deer's environment, it seems the white-tailed deer has adapted and gone on to thrive throughout its range in North America. However, there are some characteristic differences in whitetails that are specific to the deer, according to the geographic region in which they live. These differences appear in the color of the deer's hair, the overall body size and weight, the height and length of the deer, and its antler size. This was brought home to me firsthand in 1987 when I shot my first South Texas buck, a 14-pointer in Sarita, Texas. The buck was aged to be 8.5 years old. The rack had a Boone & Crockett score of 171 1/8 points. Yet the deer field dressed at only 98 pounds. Many people who see the head mount of this buck often remark that it looks like a rack mounted on a doe. The fact is, the buck was killed in the deep south region of Texas, not far from Mexico. Deer of that region are classified as the subspecies Odocoleus virginianus texanus. as are Mexico's deer. They are among 12 subspecies of whitetails, with the most prominent being the key deer, found in the Florida Keys, and are smaller than other whitetail found in North America. These deer have come to evolve this way for obvious or perhaps not so obvious reasons. Living their lives in an area that is hot and arid for 6 months of the year and warm the remaining 6 months of the year, they have made some necessary adjustments to their bodies via the evolutionary process of survival of the fittest. They are smaller in their overall body size. Keys deer rarely exceed 28 inches at the shoulder and are rarely more than 80 pounds in live weight. The hair on their coats is not as long as other deer. Even the ears, face, and tails are all smaller than normal-sized deer. Why? Adaptation. Deer living in areas where the hot climatic temperatures are often oppressive, like Mexico, the Florida Keys, and South Texas, do not need to be as large in body size as their northern cousins, who must undergo the ever-changing weather conditions of the four seasons, and mainly severe winter climates. The northern body characteristics would in fact hinder deer that live in these hot, dry areas of the country. A larger body would mean the deer would have to take in more food and, more importantly, water to fuel, nourish, and cool itself. Scarce commodities in the hot, oppressive heat of South Texas and Mexico, and even in some parts of the Florida Keys. In addition, hides with thicker, longer hairs would not act as efficiently to keep the deer properly cool, and so on. So Mother Nature, perfected in her design, has altered these deer over time to live in these arid, torrid regions in order to help them survive better. This also accounts for why deer living in the inhospitable, severe winter climates typical of northern Maine or British Columbia have larger bodies and thicker coats. True, the larger body requires more food, but then it can provide itself with more fat reserve, which acts as additional insulation against the cold. Obviously, the thicker coat also helps it through the extreme climates of these regions as well. The subspecies of deer residing in the northernmost portions or latitudes of the country are mostly the Borealis and Dakotensis. Mother Nature has genetically engineered this subspecies of white-tailed deer to be its largest subspecies, with most specimens standing 40 inches high at the shoulder. In the northern regions of North America, the length of an adult male deer may reach 95 inches from the tip of its nose to the tail. Whitetails found in the central portions of the United States generally reach a length of 72 inches, with southwestern deer reaching only 55 inches in total length. Interestingly, the antler size and dimensions of mature whitetail bucks depend mostly on age, diet, and genetic inheritance, although geographic conditions also come into play too. The largest whitetail buck ever recorded was a Minnesota whitetail taken in 1926, as of the time this book was written. The buck dressed out at 402 pounds and had an estimated live weight of 511 pounds. Jesus. Another buck taken in the northern tier of neighboring Wisconsin in 1924 had a field-dressed weight of 386 pounds, which gave it an estimated live weight of 491 pounds. Additionally, another white Wisconsin buck was taken in 1941, dressed out at 378 pounds, which gave it an estimated live weight of 481 pounds. Even today, it's not unusual, especially in Maine, Saskatchewan, and the Adirondack Mountain of New York, for bucks to have a field dressing weight of 200 to 250 pounds. Basically, one needs to remember the primary deer found throughout North America is the white-tailed deer. All other names mentioned above are just subspecies and were given their names to describe the locale in which they live and physical characteristic traits of that particular deer. I did realize about the obviously the different regions and the different sizes of the deer and whatnot, but not to that extent. I wonder if that record still stands. I'll have to look that up. But I hope you enjoyed getting a little foundational knowledge about white-tailed deer and why they're different from region to region. It makes intuitive sense, but finally hear it kind of put together, described around, their habitats and whatnot. And makes it even more sense. So yeah, with that, I think I'm going to leave y'all on this one. Remember, pay attention to your politicians and the ones running for office. Make sure they're not slippery yellow bellies. Make sure you demand the most of them, and then hope you're getting excited for deer season coming up. Unless you're already out there hunting, but for the regular rifle season coming up, I am licking my chops. So hope you are with me as well. And with that, I will leave you this one and hope to see you on the next one. Thanks for coming along. Take care.
Well, I hope the bandits gave you an interesting episode that either entertained or educated you. Or better yet, both. Hell, I told them this podcasting thing looks harder to do than defeating Santa Anna. So if you would, please help them out by sharing it with all your like-minded friends to help the bandits get the word out. And don't forget to check us out at feedbandit.com and grab some gear and apparel to support the cause of Texas. Remember, Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Finally, as I said some time ago on the eve of the great battle, and I vigorously repeat here again, be men. Be free men, that your children may bless their father's name. Well, fellow bandit, until next time.